There. Is it ready? I want to see it too, okay?
The pictures are dead. Defective stock.
Oh, well. We better get home, kid.
I just want to know how you're involved with that photograph and what it has to do with our children.
Before I answer, how much do you know about parapsychology?
Welcome to Cinematic Void Podcast. Cinematic Void is a cult film series that hosts screenings in the Los Angeles area and virtually. You can find Cinematic Void on the World Wide Web at cinemacvoid.com, as well as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, and Patreon. By joining our Patreon, you help make this podcast possible, as well as Cinematic Void Up All Night and the Cinematic Movie, which is our monthly screening series. I'm your host, Jim Branscombe, and joining me through the power of the internet is...
Hey, what's up? It's Nick Vance. You can find me at Paranoid Futures on all the social media stuff. What are we getting into today?
Well, we're getting into Lucio Fulci. In fact, we're going to be talking a lot of Fulci on the next several episodes of the Cinematic Void podcast. All right, we're talking supernatural Lucio Fulci films with Scott Carlson of Repulsion, Cathedral, and Death Breath. As I was trying to break down Fulci's career, he has pockets of things. It's interesting that he does have a little pocket of supernatural films. It might not be as prominent as like the giallos or the comedies or the zombie films, but he made some interesting films in that realm. And I guess you could say the zombie films also fall into it a little bit because they weren't traditional Romero zombies, because Gates of Hell had teleporting zombies. The Beyond had like 1 minute you're in a hospital and then you walk into the fucking like hotel and then you're in the fucking painting. And then House by the Cemetery just goes absolutely insane when you jump through you crawl out of a grave and then hang out with two ghosts. So Fulci always had a flair for the supernatural, or he was developing one. I mean, even the giallos have a little bit of that. I selected these films because I think they're mostly, at least in my mind, fall into that supernatural category. Although this first one we're going to talk about, I cheated and I showed it when I did January Giallo for this year. One of the last things I got to do before the world shut down. It's from 1981. It's Lucio Fulci's version of Edgar Allan Poe's The Black Cat. Stars Patrick McGee, Mimsy Farmer, David Warbeck, Al Cliver, and Dagmar Lassner. It's basically about a professor who uses his psychic ability to talk to the dead and uses his cat as an assassin. But then the cat turns the tables, develops its own psychic powers, and then uses the professor to go attack people. So it's kind of nutty, but it's actually really, really well done. I was really happy to show a 35mm print of this back in January. Like, although I was scared when the print started because it had all Spanish titles, it's like, I'm fucked if they start speaking Spanish at any point. And we got through the credits, and then no one talks for like the first 5-6 minutes of the movie. So it's like,
you're just sweating.
I'm just sweating. But then I heard a pop. I heard a little bit of Spanish, and then I heard a pop, and then I heard English. And I was like, okay, someone just fucking spliced in Spanish titles for this. And from, rewatching, I hadn't seen this movie in forever. And I know it wasn't really a giallo, but I figured I could cheat enough with it. It's actually a really good movie. It's got a really, really nice Pinot Noir score. And Fulci makes good use of the English setting, and it's kind of different for him because it kind of feels like one of those like UK like horror movies from the 70s or late 60s. Like,
yeah,
I don't want to say
got like horror sort of feel to it.
Yeah, it's different for him, but it's well done. It's kind of in that pocket where he's with the same collaborators and all that kind of stuff. And it's a psychic cat movie, and it's weird, but it's well done.
Yeah, for sure. Great cast as well. Patrick McGee is office rocker, and apparently was a severe alcoholic. And I wonder if the makeup, like he has yellow bags under his eyes. Yellow. Like the bags under his eyes are fucking like absolutely yellow. And I wonder if that was makeup or if that was just like his poor health. But he is super creepy. That role was supposed to be Donald Pleasance, but he was working on another film and didn't finish in time. And then when I was talking about this film online the other day, Troy Howarth, who has written a book about Fulci, chimed in and said that actually they actually had Peter Cushing contracted to play the part at one time, even before Donald Pleasance, which is was news to me. I'd never heard that before, but it's almost better. I mean, it would have given it a very Hammer feel then. It already has sort of a 70s Hammer horror vibe to it, but with Peter Cushing, it would have totally felt that way. But between Patrick McGee, Cushing, and Donald Pleasance, I'm actually kind of glad that it ended up being Patrick McGee because he kind of knocks it out of the park. He's fucking totally psycho and creepy. You have Mimsy Farmer, David Warbeck, Al Cliver, Dagmar Lassander. Pretty solid, like, main players there.
And Dagmar has a really, really epic death in this movie. I think it's a firewalk into a dummy drop, if I'm not mistaken.
But there's some bats as well, right?
Yeah, there's some
Another
bats.
crazy bat scene. Before the fire, I believe she gets attacked by bats.
I like this movie a lot, and as I said, watching on the big screen kind of like gave a new appreciation of it, because like I think it's considered like this oddball Fulci thing, but I also think this is more proof that like he was really talented director and could do a lot. It on the surface doesn't look and feel like a Fulci movie, but it's definitely there. The cat violence is, by cat violence I mean not violence towards the cat, but the cat fucking mauling people is like really, really great. I think the cat even does like a little bit of that Gates of Hell teleporting and like appears and then fucks someone up and disappears.
Yeah, the cat's actually great, and there's some fucking amazing cinematography with the cat's point of view, you know, and then same thing sort of happens in the movie, the other movie we're going to talk about. There's some cool like animal point of view cinematography in these films.
So why don't we just go ahead and jump to the next one in the supernatural Fulci sweepstakes? It is Manhattan Baby, which I guess at one point was released as Eye of the Evil Dead. I assume as a cash-in later when it hit the grindhouses is chasing as an Evil Dead sequel for whatever reason. But I guess technically it came out before Evil Dead hit theaters, because Evil Dead didn't hit till 83 and this came out in 82, but might have came out in 82 in Italy, probably came out here much later. It stars Christopher Connelly, who was in Atlantis Interceptor, and Giovanni Frizzi, a.k.a. Bob. It doesn't matter what his fucking name is in Manhattan Baby. He will always be Bob.
He's got some juicy dialogue in this film as well. You're a lousy lesbian. Because she tells him he's not a very good baseball player. Who asked you, you lousy lesbian?
Oh, Bob.
Weird accent, too. He's got like whoever dubs his character, I believe his name is Tommy in this movie, is like, he's got a weird accent. It's kind of like an Egyptian-themed supernatural curse movie, and Christopher Connelly is in Egypt with his wife and daughter, and he's like exploring some ancient tomb, and he disturbs the tomb, and his guide gets impaled. There's an impalement scene in this one and in The Black Cat, right?
Yeah.
Like, so yeah, they're very similar impalement scenes, but in this one, like his guide like falls through like a trap door and like lands on a bunch of spikes, and somehow Christopher Connelly, when he falls through, he misses all the spikes, but then moments later gets like zapped in the eyes with these like blue lasers that look like they're from a Blue Oyster Cult concert or something. They blind him, and simultaneously his daughter's like waiting for him outside, and this woman comes up to her and gives her this medallion, and you know it's like the embodiment of evil or something, and she takes it back to New York, and it absorbs the aura of the medallion, then opens up a portal in her bedroom where the babysitter and like her mom's coworker disappear through this portal and end up in fucking Egypt laying on the fucking desert floor. It's a kooky, you know, it almost gets to that nonsensical, it kind of feels like and part of the reason that it feels like The Beyond or something is because it uses the fucking music from The Beyond and City of the Living Dead quite heavily. There is some original Fritzy music in there as well, but there's huge chunks of the score. And in fact, the most defining moments in the film are using the same fucking theme from The Beyond most of the time. But so it does give it that feel, and it has similar, you know, sort of cinematography, but clearly not anywhere near as striking. The visuals are actually really good, but you know, the death scenes are all sort of toned down, and you know, there's not a lot of gore. But I don't know, watching it again, you know, seeing it with in its original scope aspect ratio, or wait, this one might have been 185, I can't remember, but it looks no, I think it is actually, it is 235. But these films, like, they look a lot better than they used to on VHS. There's a lot more craftsmanship that's revealed just by, seeing, a nice, sharp, focused picture, and the original aspect ratio alone is enough to give you a new appreciation for these films. And also, like Manhattan Baby, and in a lot of Fulci's movies that aren't the gore movies of that era, like rewatching them without the weight of, the expectation that you have, like if you've just discovered Lucio Fulci and you've watched, obviously when you first discover Fulci, someone's going to tell you, like, you need to see The Beyond, and then you need to see it again. And then you need to see City of the Living Dead and Zombie and House by the Cemetery. Those are the ones that people are going to tell you need to see, and probably the Giallos. So then you get around to, like, okay, I love all those Fulci movies. Where do I go next? If you go to Manhattan Baby, you're going to be fucking hugely disappointed if you watch it the night after you watched City of the Living Dead or Zombie. But going back and watching it again 20 years later, for me, was rewarding, because it's actually a much better film than I ever gave it credit for. It's not a great movie by any stretch of the imagination, but under 90 minutes, and held my attention the entire time.
That's what I was gonna say. When it came to that point when you go through Fulci's filmography, especially when you're getting into horror and you're like getting extreme stuff, Manhattan Baby, unfortunately, when you get to it, it felt like a disappointment, because it's just like, the fuck are you trying to do, a PG movie or something like that? And I actually stayed away from it, because I remember kind of reading little bits about it, and like, I think Chaz Ballin wrote a review in one of the Deep Red Horror Handbook, or one of the Deep Red issues, and I was just like, it wasn't very flattering to it that, like, Fulci had stepped away and was trying to do something more mainstream. But in hindsight, and watching it out of the context of piling it in with all those gore films, like I said, it's not the greatest movie in the world, but it's still pretty decent. It's still well done, and it's kind of interesting, because, at the same point, it's like Fulci made 5 of the goriest movies ever made between like 1979 and 1982. And at a certain point, you can't keep doing that, because it's like, then you get into that habit of like, I always got to top myself, always got to top myself. And I feel like after he did The Beyond, I don't think he felt the need to top himself as much. Because when you watch House by the Cemetery, which came out the same year as this, there's gore and there's murders in it. They're not as elaborate, and they're not as like spectacle oriented as they were in The Beyond or Gates of Hell or Zombie.
I think this one had a much larger budget, and that ended up getting cut, and that's why it's not quite as gory as a lot of the ones that came out before it.
Yeah, maybe he couldn't afford to hire a makeup artist or something. It's not bad. If it was really gory, it would probably be lumped in with all of his other movies, because it does have like a sort of loose, messy plot. It's way more linear than like City of Living Dead or The Beyond or House by the Cemetery, but it's still kind of a mess in that department. But it looks cool. There's a lot of interesting visuals, and it sounds good. The one thing that maybe also holds this movie back is the cast is just like has no presence. Like Christopher Connolly, he doesn't bring anything to the table. Martha Taylor, who plays his wife, I don't even know who that is outside of this movie. Giovanni Frezza, the Bob kid, he steals the show. The title character, basically, Manhattan Baby, she's also really good. Her and Bob, or Tommy, in this movie, I think the little girl's name is Susie. They remind me of the kids in, although they're not as foul-mouthed, of the kids in Beyond the Door, who are like these two firecracker brats. That's totally what the kids in Manhattan Baby reminded me of. And there's this weird thing too, like the little girl has red hair, and then Jennifer O'Neill's character, when she's a little girl in The Psychic, has red hair, and the little girl that gets her head blown off in The Beyond has red hair. Like, he's got a thing for like redheaded little kids. I don't know what that's all about, but it's interesting. I was thinking that as I was going through these movies.
Fulci has like a lot of weird things that like he revisits throughout his filmography, and you never really think about it until you actually kind of go through and like, I wouldn't even say we're really dissecting it. It's just things you kind of notice at this point. that was probably not as upfront because, like I said, and you said as well, like when you first get into Fulci, it's gore, gore, gore. But then once you get past that, there's a whole world of things that like I've missed, and I even rewatching Zombie, which I feel like I've seen a million times at this point in my life. I feel like watching that new 4K from Blue Underground was like, shit, I missed stuff. Had a new appreciation for it, and I know you've already said that, but I think the thing doing this and like talking about all these movies and kind of watching them or like just thinking about it is just like it's a dense fucking filmography.
Yeah, I've only seen like one of his comedies, and I like his westerns too. But the one thing about his westerns that bugs me is he tends to go for these like kind of shitty folk music scores. Like they have bad scores, but they're pretty good movies. I like For the Apocalypse and Massacre Time, and Silver Saddle is kind of late, but yeah, the music is bad in those movies. Like, yeah, you know, spaghetti western to me needs, you know, that sort of some gritty music.
I think Frizzy did For the Apocalypse, right? And he definitely did some like country folk soundtrack for it.
Yeah, there's a couple really annoying songs in that film that just, there's the one theme that just repeats over and over again. I can't remember the lyrics right now, but I remember the last time I watched it, it was just driving me nuts.
Laurel Canyon kind of vibe.
Yeah, it's not even that good. I mean, what is that song? I just can't recall it right now, but it's very like sappy, like folk music. So the other Fulci supernatural films that I can think of off the top of my head are Enigma and Demonia, but I haven't seen those in so long. I actually ordered the Blu-rays that just came out of those, which it's kind of funny to think that those films are like getting the white glove treatment now, you know. But I remember Enigma being sort of like a poor man's phenomena type of thing.
For Enigma, this is my description of it. It's Carrie meets Patrick meets Phenomena with snail attacks.
Like it's like a girl is she like ends up in a coma or something, or
yeah. I mean, I haven't seen it in a bit either, so, and obviously the Blu-ray is not out yet, so I can't really like have the reappraisal like some of these other ones we've been talking about and watching. But I do remember like there are some high points, and I think again anything post Murder Rock, Fulci never had like another like completely solid film. But like I feel like for Enigma and Demonia, he definitely had his moments that like get close. At that point of his career, like I'll take Get Close because like his Getting Close is better than a lot of shit fucking filmmakers anyway. I mean, with Enigma, it's kind of a throwback to like the New England kind of horror, because this one takes place in a New England boarding school of like Gates of Hell or House by the Cemetery. Not in the same sense of that, but like he kind of like goes back to the well. And, you know, obviously these aren't as gory as the heyday. I think they're interesting. I think, you know, I'm looking forward to those Blu-rays because I want to give them a reappraisal. I think the last time I watched them was when Shriek Show put them both out on DVD.
Yeah, I've not even seen those. We used to have the Japanese VHS tapes of Demonia and Nightmare Concert and Touch of Death. Can't remember if there was one for Enigma or not. There probably was.
I remember the Japanese art for Enigma. Actually, or at least I remember seeing, because like the art to Enigma, which let's just be honest, is better than the actual movie. It's like that cover art that they used and the poster art is fucking phenomenal.
I can't remember the name of that artist, but he's done a lot of those posters. He's great. Oh yeah, Zombie 3 is another one of the ones that you know I have a soft spot for.
I mean that's really three directors in one on Zombie 3.
Does anybody know who directed what? I can't see anything in there that makes me think Lucio Fulci.
We talked about this a little bit when we were talking about the zombie films because we had to mention Zombie 3. So allegedly Fulci turned it before he had another like heart problem and left the Philippines. He had 70 minutes done. Bruno Mattei, fucking maniac that he is, and Claudio Fragasso ended up throwing out, like, I think they only used 40 to 50 minutes of Fulci stuff, and they shot another 40 minutes. And I'm sure the stuff they shot is like the stuff where you see the guy with the fog machine just out of frame, like spraying and then like running and hiding and that kind of ridiculous stuff. The only thing I know for sure, because Fulci said it was one of the best gags he came up with is the flying skull out of the fridge. Fulci's like, that's one of my favorite moments in a shit film, or I forget what the exact quote was. I do think Zombie 3 is fun in all of its utter ridiculousness, and I always had a theory that Fulci really wasn't sick. He just realized, like, I don't want to do this fucking movie because so he just like, oh, I gotta go, guys. See ya. And they're just like, you guys made movies. Because it definitely doesn't feel like a Fulci movie. Even compared, like if you watch Enigma or Demonia and then watch Zombie 3, like there's really, you can't see the connective tissue, so to speak.
They're all connected by cheese. That's the thing.
Whatever cheese is used for Enigma or Demonia, let's just say it's just, a medium cheddar. Zombie 3 is definitely like a fucking like smelly blue cheese.
Yeah, I'd have to see the other ones again to, try and figure out what the scale is on those.
Demonia is kind of interesting because it's, supernatural. It's nunsploitation. It's ridiculous. I honestly can't really remember much of it. I would just remember like the nuns in it and that kind of thing. And it's just like, it does have some of that nightmare logic from like the earlier like zombie movies and Manhattan Baby, and I think it does have standout like gore moments, but I kind of wish those Blu-rays out, so I had to revisit before watching it. But I don't know. So the last movie we're going to talk about, and we're going to just talk briefly because it's the last. It's like the next to last Fulci movie. It's that he directed, which is Voice from Beyond. And I hate to say it, like the last time I watched it, I didn't really like it.
I'm going to have to sit this one out. I've seen it. I remember buying it when I was in England one time from like a bargain bin at HMV. It was on video in the UK. And I was like, Lucio Fulci, and it's like £2. I bought it and brought it home. And I watched it years ago. I don't really remember much about it. Sort of a supernatural thing, right? With some guy like hearing voices or something.
I mean, I think it's like this wealthy businessman dies of a stomach hemorrhage, and then like he comes back as a ghost, and like he's not sure if like the reason why he died was because it was an actual like natural death or someone did something to him to kill him. So then he's just basically bugging his fucking daughter to like help solve the crime. I root for Fulci, but like at this point it's pretty late in his career. Like I said, it was the next to last movie he directed. I don't think there was much money into it, so it just kind of lacks comparatively. But like the only reason I'm mentioning it because there is that supernatural element. And I'm not trying to end things on a downer note about Fulci in his career, but at a certain point, like where Demonia and Enigma and Cat in the Brain have a lot of fun elements to them, and they're quite watchable. This one it's just lacking, and I don't have a reason for it, but it kind of watching Voices from Beyond makes me want to go back and like watch the other stuff because it's just like, or maybe I should go back and rewatch Voices Beyond now that I watch all this stuff, because the last time I watched Voices Beyond was maybe a couple years ago, and just like I had a hard time with it. But maybe it's due for reappraisal, because obviously that's what we've been talking about a lot, is like reappraising it, or reappraising Fulci in general.
Door into Silence. That was another one from around that time, right?
Yeah, Door of Silence was his actual last movie, or at least credited last movie. He might have shot them back to back, or I don't know. It's kind of hard to tell how fast or when they were coming out, because it was like, I think it was Cat in the Brain, this, and then Door of Silence.